Zoo-wee mama! I'm here today to talk about Misery, the newest card coming to Marvel Snap, and whether I think she will be worth buying or if I think she'll be a bit of a bust and you should probably save your resources for a different card. Now, Misery is coming to Spotlights on October 8th alongside War Machine and Namora. We're going to dive more into this Spotlight week later on. We're also going to talk about Misery's best decks potentially and the pros, the cons, just some good synergy combos. And at the end, I'll give my ratings and show you the community ratings, what the community thinks of Misery. So she is a 4-cost, 7-powered card with the very interesting on-reveal ability to repeat the on-reveal abilities of your other cards, very much like Odin. But after she repeats those on reveals, she will destroy those cards. Okay, now I do want to give clarification here because with her original text, it can be kind of interpreted in two different ways. And I know during my season preview video, some people thought she destroyed everything. Okay, and I can see why the text, makes you think that. Second Dinner has clarified. I did ask them, and they also responded to the community post in Discord. Misery will only destroy on reveal cards. Okay, so you're going to play her on a location. Let's say that location has White Widow, and let's say it has, I don't know, some other card like Thena. Okay, Thena is not an on reveal card, but White Widow is. If you play Misery on that location, Misery will trigger White Widow again and then destroy White Widow, but Misery will not destroy Thena. She won't interact with Thena at all. Okay, so it's very selective in what she targets and what she destroys. It's only working with on reveal. So I want to give that clarification. It really gives some interesting deck building options and just specific combos that haven't been possible before. And let's take a look at some of her best synergies. So to start off, we might be looking to play Misery alongside something like the Hood. This could be really nice. I mean, the Hood normally is -3 power, so by destroying him, you're actually gaining more power, right? Misery is effectively a 4/10, and then you get another demon to your hand because you're going to trigger the Hood again and then destroy it. It also just works well with the other Clog cards. I mentioned White Widow. That could be a really good target. Something like Debris, just add more rocks to your opponent's side of the board. That could be a good target, and you can do these cards at the same time, right? It's not like Absorbing Man where he's only hitting one thing. You could have a location that has the Hood, White Widow, and Debris, and you just play Misery on that lane and make it a miserable time for your opponent. Now, there's also some potential for some mill deck synergy, right? Because this is another cheap card that has a really strong effect for the archetype in Yondu, okay? He has 2 power. That is important, but it's not crazy power. It's not like you're destroying a ton, but he's got really good ability if you're trying to mill your opponent. So you could play Misery on a card like Yondu or Cable to get rid of 2 more cards from your opponent's deck while not taking away too much power. And then another card that I know a few people are excited for is Electro. Okay, there's been talk. It's like, okay, you can play Wiccan to get +2 energy, or you can play Electro into Misery to get +2 energy. Now, if you do this combo, you are destroying that Electro, of course, and so Misery adding 7 power is the same as Wiccan adding 7 power, but Wiccan, you would still have your 3-cost card on the board, and I'm not sure Misery plus Electro is worth it. Electro into Bling or Electro into Cersei might just be more profitable, or just playing Wiccan might be better. You don't need 2 specific cards, you just need clear turn 1, 2, 3, and then into Wiccan, okay? But the cards you play before that can vary. But we'll see. I think it is worth experimenting with Electro and Misery, because if that combo works, it could bring Electro back into seeing some real play. Now, if you're playing Misery, what do you not like seeing? Okay, there's a couple interesting counters, I think. First up, I've got Airsham listed. Airsham decks, because they start out with 1 extra energy, they're just so far ahead in tempo, okay? With Misery, you're kind of doing a trade-off, right? You're triggering these on reveals again, and I mentioned the Clog, I mentioned the Mill, but usually you're losing power on your side of the board, right? If Misery's a 4/7 and you play her on your Electro, Misery was essentially a 4/5 because you just killed your 2-power Electro, and that 2 power does matter. With Airsham decks, they're playing so far ahead of curve and ahead of you. They're usually tempoing out just good power stuff with kind of mediocre abilities ahead of you. And so putting yourself behind by destroying your own cards isn't gonna feel good, okay? You're just gonna feel like you're getting blown off the board because Airshim decks start up so fast. And if you're playing Mill and Misery, that doesn't feel great against Airshim either. Cosmo, obviously, he's seen some real play right now. I've been playing Cosmo a lot. But if your opponent is setting up some Wong combo where you're expecting Odin, you know to slap a Cosmo down, right? There may come a time, if Misery does see real play, that if you see your opponent playing, say, a mill deck with Yondu plus Cable in the same location, you're going to be expecting a Misery there, and you're just going to play Cosmo there. Okay, so if Misery actually sees just a decent level of play, it might be a really obvious target for Cosmo because you're going to see your opponent stacking in a location with on reveals. And then White Widow. Okay, White Widow synergizes with Misery, but also counters Misery because cards like Misery, cards like Odin, they need space on the location. You want to trigger as many things as possible. But if your location is getting clogged, you can't do that. Okay, and Misery again is only re-triggering and destroying on reveals, so she's not going to get rid of rocks. She's not going to destroy a Widow's Kiss. That's an ongoing card. I mean, Clog is going to be really annoying. Acid Arrow or Green Goblin or Hobgoblin, she will get rid of those and destroy them, so that won't be too bad, but the other Clog cards are still going to be pretty annoying, unfortunately. Now let's talk more about the good and the bad for Misery. First up, with the good, this is just cool, okay? This is very interesting. She's the first card to really combine this ability to trigger on reveals again with the element of destroy. Okay, we do have Phoenix Force in the game, and Phoenix Force will resurrect a card that was previously destroyed, and then, you can get further interaction that way. But Phoenix Force isn't actually destroying stuff, right? Misery is the one destroying stuff here and repeating multiple on reveals. I mean, she's really just combining Odin and a card like Deathlock. Okay, very interesting concept here. I love the design space. I think she's a well-designed card. In terms of what else she does that's new, she's a targeted location destroy. Okay, Deathlock will just destroy everything. Same thing with Carnage, same thing with Venom. Killmonger will destroy just all one-cost cards. That's across locations. With Misery, you can play on a location with 3 other cards, but only destroy 1 or 2 of them if they're on reveals. Okay, so you can actually mix and match. You can put a card that you want destroyed in the same location as a card you don't want destroyed. And if that one you don't want destroyed isn't on reveal, you can actually do that. It's very interesting. It gives a whole new layer of flexibility and depth. It's going to interact with how you plan out where you play your cards during the game. I think it's very interesting, very cool. She is 2 cheaper than Odin. Okay, Odin costs 6, Misery costs 4. 2 less cost is a big difference, that's significant, and she only has 1 less power. Okay, compared to Odin, she's got a great stat line, 4/7, very, very nice. And again, she's just a fun card. She's interesting. She's going to be a deck building challenge because you need good on reveals and you need cards you don't mind getting destroyed. Okay, and so it is going to be a bit challenging, but I think that makes it fun. Again, I think she adds a whole new layer to Snap and what is possible when it comes to gameplay and deck building, and I think that's awesome. In terms of the cons, well, you're destroying cards that don't normally get destroyed, right? You're destroying these cards that are not destroyed targets because Misery cannot destroy your Wolverine or your X-23 or your Nimrod because they're not on reveal cards. So even a card like Electro, I used to play a ton of Electro Ramp back in the day. Maybe around this time last year or a little bit earlier, Electro decks were still pretty strong, and I wouldn't destroy him. I mean, even if I had a location like Death's Domain, I would not play Electro there. Like, his 2 power was important. Okay, I have a deck built for Electro. Like, my deck isn't built on the case that I need to destroy him. And then later, Blink comes out, Cersei comes out, and now you can transform or swap out Electro, so you don't just lose the power. With Misery, it's important to know that you are losing the power of those cards. And unless the card has 0 or negative power, like the Hood, which is an obvious amazing target, you're actually going to be losing stuff. Okay, these cards don't like being destroyed. Even if it's just White Tiger, you're still losing that 1 power. Okay, White Tiger would much rather get hit by Odin than Misery. All right, it's important to think about every power matters, and when Misery kills that, it's bad. Most of these all-out combos are too much. I think they're traps. In my season preview video, someone commented they're going to do a full mill deck, which I like the idea of doing Misery and mill. I'm going to show a mill deck with Misery later. I think it's a fantastic idea. But they mentioned playing Yondu plus Cable plus Gladiator. in the same location and then playing Misery on top of it. And Misery will re-trigger them, and then you've milled 6 cards from your opponent's deck by turn 4. Their deck is completely gone by turn 4. I think it's hilarious. I think it's funny, but I don't think it's very good, because that also means you just have 7 power on the board on one location by turn 4, and then you basically need to follow it up with like a magic, okay? I don't think you want to kill too much, right? I don't think you want to kill a gladiator with a Misery. I think you're happy to kill 1-cost cards. You know, maybe you want to kill the Yondu and the Cable in that scenario. But don't get trapped, okay? Don't think that you have to go all out and every time you play Misery, you have to re-trigger and destroy 3 cards. You don't. You can get away with just doing it on 1 or 2 cards. Maybe you just play the Hood and Misery. That's still just good stats, right? You get 2 demons in your hand, and you have a 4/7 on the board. That's just good stats. And so you don't have to get carried away. You don't have to get trapped by this card. You don't have to go all out. Most 4-cost cards, unfortunately, that come to Snap, new ones and existing ones, just aren't very good. When we think of last season, the weakest cards last season were Symbiote Spider-Man and Scarlet Spider. Okay, they were the worst. Last season, I would say it was pretty balanced. The cards were fairly close, but 4 costs are just clunky. They're just in a bad spot in the game right now. 3 costs are absolutely killing it. They're on another level. 3-cost cards are so good right now. We're getting a lot of great 2-cost cards. We've even had more come out recently. They're doing great right now. Even 1-cost cards are doing fine right now. 4 costs, not so much. And so just knowing Misery is a 4-cost card, unless we see a Zabu buff soon or a Zabu rework soon, I think she's going to be too clunky. Okay, I do. It just happens with every 4-cost card and most of the existing 4-cost cards in the game. Again, there are some good ones, but once Zabu got nerfed, a lot of the decent or good ones just stopped seeing real play. And then lastly, you know, she is hard to deck build with. I mentioned that this is kind of fun and interesting, but it is hard. It's going to be difficult. It may limit the amount of decks she fits into. She could be very, very niche. Now to visualize Misery's floor and her ceiling, her reasonable worst and reasonable best that you will see fairly often. At the worst is you're destroying too much. Okay, I mentioned this before. You do not want to kill like a gladiator with Misery. Okay, you don't want to kill something too powerful. So there's might be cases that if you're not planning out your plays well, where you're stacking cards, or if you're just trying to go all out with Misery and say let's go for it, you might destroy 5 or more power of stuff and not even have an insane payoff from the on reveals. Okay, and if that happens, you basically just played a 4/2 with like whatever on reveals, just decent on reveals. You would not play that in the game. In Snap, you would not play a 4-cost card with 2 power that just has like fine on reveals, right? To play a 4/2, you need some really game-changing stuff, okay? You need some really important, impactful stuff. Obviously, would not be viable nor to be competitive. Now, in terms of her ceiling, I think her ceiling is that you actually destroy very, very low power, whether it's 0 power or it's negative power. I mean, if you just played her on the Hood, again, she's a 4/10 in that case. That gives a demon to your hand. That's good. I think that alone is good. We could play her on a card like Ironheart. Maybe you play her on the Hood and White Widow, so you're gaining 3 power back from killing the Hood, and then you're losing 2 power from killing White Widow, so you're up 1. You know, or maybe you're split even if you like killed the Hood and then killed Debris, right? There's ways to kind of manage it where Misery actually does come down at a 4/7, maybe a little bit higher, maybe just a tiny bit lower, but with good, solid on-reveal effects that synergize with your deck and your game plan. Now, I'm not sure it's overpowered. You know, this is the high roll, and you are still having to set up other cards, right? Even if she comes down as like a 4/7 that's doing something, you still had to draw that Hood and play. You still had to draw the White Widow or the Debris and play it. Okay, sometimes you're just not going to draw the right cards, and Misery doesn't help you out in that case. Where's Misery on average? Well, on average, unless it's with the Hood, I think you're going to have to destroy some power, but I don't think you're going to get carried away. I think you're going to look to destroy like 2 or 3 power. Okay, maybe you're just killing a White Widow or just a Debris. Again, if your draws aren't perfect, you probably still have at least 1 decent target you want to hit. Maybe it's just a Yondu or just a Cable in a mill deck. In which case, she's essentially like a 4/5 with decent on reveals. That's Absorbing Man. Okay, Absorbing Man is a 4/4 with decent on reveals because he's copying the last card you play. Now, Misery has the upside that she could be hitting multiple on reveals. But of course, every new on reveal you hit is another card destroyed. So on average, I could see her being about the power level of Absorbing Man. Here's just my friendly reminder to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you have not already, because we go over every single new card in Marvel Snap. I will also be having a spotlight ratings video for October coming out very, very soon to help you plan out how you will spend your very precious resources. The first deck I want to showcase with Misery is this Mill deck. Okay, I talked about this a bit earlier. I talked about the synergy with Hood and Yondu. I got both of them in here. You usually do not have the Hood in a Mill deck, but because of the Misery synergy, I think it's worth trying out, as well as the White Widow here. She actually can work with Mill, because if your opponent doesn't have cards to fill their location, then the Widow's Kiss will actually stay at -3 power. So we've got a good amount of on reveals in this deck. In fact, this top line here, these are all on reveal cards, okay? And with the exception of, I'd say, Magic, there's really no point to triggering her again. With the exception of Magic, Zemo, Gladiator, and probably Shang-Chi and Black Bolt, you're going to be triggering all the other on reveals again, okay? You're happy to hit the Hood again. You're happy to hit Yondu, even though he's taken off 2 power. Same thing with White Widow. And Cable is about as far as you go, I think, with wanting to re-trigger with Misery. This one, you can go exceptionally fast for just getting rid of your opponent's deck. If you have Misery, instead of Absorbing Man, you can mill your opponent's deck faster than any other combo in the game, right? Because essentially, if you've already played Yondu and Cable, on turn 4, you're playing both of those again. And normally, you can't do that because you already played them. And I just think it's a fun archetype, so I'm very much excited to test this one out. Next up, I've got Misery in a Clog deck. Now, we would normally have a card like Dr. Octopus here. This is a fairly standard Clog list, but again, Misery can really accelerate things, okay? If you did have a good start, that could be the Hood into White Widow or Debris, or just White Widow into Debris. Playing Misery on that is going to be doing so much. It means that location you play Misery on, your opponent's going to have 2 Widow's Kiss, and their other locations, they're going to have 2 rocks. I mean, it just does so much at one time. You're really going just all out Clog, okay? And again, she really speeds things up faster than Absorbing Man because she's hitting hopefully 2 on reveals. There's no other real great targets here. You probably don't want to hit the Viper. You could go and try and hit Cannonball again if needed on the last turn, but you are going to kill him. So really, again, we're looking at these low power cards. And what's nice, you know, Titania in here, she will never get killed by Misery. Same thing with Red Hulk, he will never get killed by Misery. So you don't have to worry about friendly fire there. Last up, I've got this Agent Venom cheap power deck. Now, this is a bit of modification of a deck that's currently been picking up some steam with Agent Venom since he's been released. I'm not even sure what you call these decks anymore. Do you just call them like Athena decks? I don't know. But I modified this one a bit to fit Misery, and Misery does have 7 power, so if you do hit her with Agent Venom, you are losing power. But everything else in the deck absolutely loves Agent Venom. And if you don't get your Agent Venom, then Misery is going to be great to take care of the Hood. You could also re-trigger Iceman, Nico, or White Widow. You never have to worry about accidentally killing your Bishop or your Iron Man or your Athena, okay? So I'm not sure if Misery is a good fit into this deck. I'm not sure she makes it better. It's kind of more an alternative plan if you don't get the Agent Venom, but this deck might already just be kind of relying on the Agent Venom, so you may have already, you know, had a big miss, and Misery isn't enough to make up for missing that turn 2 Agent Venom. But it's just a strong deck. He's been strong so far since the season has come out. If you haven't gotten Agent Venom already, you probably want to do so, okay? He's been putting in some good work. Now, to break down this Spotlight Week, we have Misery coming alongside War Machine and Namora right on October 8th. These are the 3 Spotlight variants that will be featured as well. To talk about how competitive I think this week is, I think it's a good week. I really do. I mean, we don't know where Misery is going to land, okay, so I do exclude her here. But War Machine, he's actually finally a good card in Marvel Snap since they made his ability an ongoing. Okay, they'd even bumped him up to 7 power, and now he's back at 6. But he's still strong. He's a nice card. Namora isn't very good at the moment because of Clog, but when Clog disappears from the meta, Namora becomes good. Okay, and Clog may even disappear a bit later in the season when we have the card Toxin coming out, and I'll get to that card when he's a bit closer. But Namor is just one of those cards that might have some metas where she's really good and, great win condition, and then some metas where she just sees very little play. Okay, but I do think she's just a nice card to own, and I know a lot of people skipped out on her when she was first released, so this is going to be a great time to go ahead and pick her up if you have not already. These are both also Series 5 cards, which is just good token value. In terms of the variants, I think they're good as well. The Misery one is actually very cool. We have a lot of the Pandered Studio variant ones that look awesome for the new cards this season. I don't own a variant for War Machine, so I'm happy to have this one. And I don't own a variant for Namora either, and I think this one's pretty cool. I love the little kind of floating faces and characters in the back here, and it's just a kind of cool color scheme. So I think this is a really, really solid Spotlight week and a good time to open. Now it's time to go over my final ratings and predictions, as well as the community ratings for Misery. In terms of being flexible, I don't think she's flexible. The community thinks she's okay. Okay, the community says, you guys say she's fitting into just a couple homes. Okay, nothing crazy, but not insanely niche. I'm not convinced of that. I think you can try playing her in multiple homes, but I do think the fact that she destroys cards is really going to bring her down. It is really going to bring her down to, one or two specific archetypes where the really cheap cards in the deck, the 1 and 2 cost cards in there, have insane synergy. Okay, and that's why I like her for mill, because Yondu, the ability to just remove a card, he's doing just as much work with his ability for mill deck as a card like Gladiator is, right? Just removing one card. He's doing the same level of work even though he only costs 1, because it's not a power-based ability. It's a, card removal-based ability, and they're both removing 1. Same thing with Clog. You're taking up board space. And so I think those two lists, she might find good homes. Other lists, you can try playing her out in, but I'm not convinced she actually make those lists better. I think she could make them worse because the cards aren't normally meant to be destroyed, okay? So we'll see, but I don't think she's going to really see valuable in multiple decks, maybe just 1 or 2. In terms of being competitive, myself and you guys, we agree here. She seems okay. She definitely does not seem busted, unless there's some crazy combos that, we're just going to have to find out. But she doesn't seem horrible. I mean, the ability to trigger on reveals again, right? That's like an Odin ability for 4. Has good potential. She's got a decent stat line. And so there's going to be some times where your combo just goes off. And maybe she's kind of combo heavy, right? Maybe it's almost like a Mr. Negative or even Odin type deck, where sometimes you get your combo, things go off, the card goes crazy, it feels good, you win. But then when you don't draw things in the right order, it falls flat and you lose and, retreat, hopefully for 1 cube. Maybe that's Misery, right? Maybe Misery doesn't have the best win rate, but she comes out with a pretty decent cube rate because you stick in and you snap when you know you're getting all the right pieces together, okay? So my recommendation for Misery, if I do think she's going to be worth it picking up or not, while I do think it is a very, very good Spotlight week, if you're not already opening the week for War Machine and or Namora, I do not think that's worth opening just for Misery. Okay, I would not chase after the Spotlights for Misery, but I do think War Machine and Namora are worth chasing after. We should definitely wait and see on Misery, but I'm just not convinced you're going to be able to play her that much. Again, kind of reminds me of Absorbing Man, who sees a little bit of play here and there, but can be replaceable, is more just a potential option. Some people play him a little bit, some people never play him. And, maybe Misery fits similar homes. Maybe you can choose to play Misery or Absorbing Man, right? I'm just not convinced she's going to be a needed card. And when these cards are 6,000 tokens and I'm not convinced they're going to be needed, I can't really recommend those for players to chase after. And just some final reminders is that the safe strategy is to always wait a few days after a card comes out to see how it's doing, see how players and streamers are performing with the card, and if they think it's worth it or not. Because when we're predicting cards ahead of time, the community, myself included, is wrong about cards all the time. Okay, we do not truly know until the card is actually in the game, no matter how confident a person sounds. We do not know until it's in the game. Sometimes cards don't work as believed. I mentioned with the destroy, how she only destroys the on reveals, but her text doesn't clarify. Some people thought she would destroy everything. Like, there are just certain interactions that you might think before the card comes out it works one way, but then it actually comes out and you get it and it works a different way, and then you're not happy, right? And that's also why you should just wait and see and learn about the different interactions. Resources are scarce, as I mentioned. Spending 6,000 tokens on a card I'm not too sure of isn't a good idea, okay? So wait on it. And then even if Misery is bad, and you do manage to open her, let's say you're not even trying to open her. Let's say you're trying to get War Machine and or Namora, and you open Misery, and she turns out to be really bad, and you're kind of salty about it. It's possible she just gets buffed in the future, right? I mean, War Machine used to be a horrible card. He was like one of the worst cards in the game since release. And he got buffed, and now he's good. So let me know if you're excited for Misery and which combos and decks you will be trying out. And until then, stay positive. I'll see you next time.